For joining our 21st Sochology Edu series. My name is Mudassir Bangish, and I'll be your host for today's session, and I'm joined by Amna, our technical director. Before we get started, just some quick announcements and housekeeping. First of all, Soch Cafe Karachi is happening this Saturday, 7 p.m. at Sasta Ticket head office, where we'll be discussing storytelling for product managers. So, Soch Cafes are in-person product manager meetups where PMs connect, discuss a topic, exchange ideas and experiences, and it's also a fantastic networking opportunity. So visit our LinkedIn page, look for the Soch Cafe Karachi post, and register in order to attend. Also, Soch Cafes for Lahore and Islamabad will be scheduled soon, so follow the Product Soch LinkedIn page to find out where and when those will be happening. For this session, whether you're joining us from LinkedIn or YouTube, please post your questions into the chat and we'll bring them up towards the end of the session. Our guest today is David Pereira. Now, if you haven't followed him on LinkedIn yet, you're really missing out on a ton of useful content and resources that David regularly puts out, all for free. In fact, David, I think you just posted a full guide on how to succeed with product discovery, and I'm literally in the midst of that right now, so I'll check that out ASAP, and I recommend you all do too. David is currently the CEO of Omoko, a Germany-based company that is building products in order to transform the maritime and logistics industry. He brings over a decade of product experiences in multiple industries and has over 50,000 followers on LinkedIn, where he frequently writes about what's broken in product management, how to fix it, and how to take your product game to the next level. Today, he'll be talking about untrapping product teams, which is essentially helping teams overcome the most common anti-patterns. David, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Over to you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. So let's start having a conversation here. I was thinking how I would start our chat for today. And one thing that came to my mind is expectation and reality. Because actually, no matter which role you take in a product team, you're going to face some things different than you expect in reality. Let me give you 3 examples. For example, you start a new job as the product manager and you expect to be the CEO of the product. You want to make decisions, to choose which problems to solve, to define what to pursue, and so on. And you are excited about it. With all of this empowerment, what can go wrong? But then it doesn't take long, you hit the corporate firewall, like prescriptive roadmaps, deadlines, and a lot of pressure from stakeholders to deliver everything by yesterday. And it happens that you are no longer the CEO of the product. At best, you are a backlog manager, so you are demoted without any further notice. But that doesn't happen only with the product manager. If you look to the software engineer perspective, what happens? Software engineer wants to create scalable code, something that they are proud of, maintainable, clean code, beautiful, it smells nice. And they arrive super excited about it. But then they will also hit some constraints. Like there will be an incredible pressure for delivery. And there's nothing they can do to fit everything in the timeline they receive. What do they do then? They cut corners. They will cut quality. It doesn't take long. The code is not that good anymore. It becomes a kind of spaghetti code and it stinks. It's not maintainable. It's not good. And software engineers are also demoted to coders. Not funny. But if you look to the third perspective of a product designer, what do they aim to create? They aim to create intuitive design, a great user experience, something that is beautiful and they are proud of. It makes the lives of customers better. And that's what they strive for. But then once they hit the corporate road, they realize that actually pleasing stakeholders is all that matters. And creating designers that powerful business people approve is what defines success. So for them, creating something that has the right tonality of blue and green and the right shape and so on is what matters. And it's the moment that they are also demoted from product designer to a pixel perfect designer. And it's not fun. And if you look at reality, no matter where you are, you're going to face some trouble like this. And the question is not how can you avoid this, because that's part of what you're going to see. The question is how can you deal with them? And this is the topic for today of untrapping product teams. I'm not here to make you feel powerless, but I'm here today to help you see common problems and then equip you to overcome them. And the last part of the talk will be how can you remain untrapped? So that's what we're going to explore today. And where do we start here? We start by looking at a common scenario, at a company. So a company will have some things in the same direction. So you have teams, like you have leadership, customer service, marketing, different teams. If your company is too big, you can consider that as a unit of your company. There will be multiple units and there will be product teams inside each unit. But one thing will be quite common. All teams will have the most brilliant ideas in the world, all of them, without any exception. At least they think so, including the product team. The product team will also come with different labels, depending where you are. Sometimes it will be a Scrum team, a dev team, a tech team, or a product team. Different labels for the same thing. What it means is that they work on creating things. But these teams have to deal with all of the ideas from everyone. And how do they deal with that? The common way is having this, the product backlog. But the product backlog doesn't take long to become extensive because look at the dynamics. This product team needs to exchange with all of the other teams. And what is happening after this exchange? They will populate the product backlog, and then eventually something after so many discussions will go out of the product backlog. I would call that as the beautiful new shiny feature that everyone loves. But if you look at this picture, there's something wrong here. I would say there's someone missing. But now is the moment that this person will see the new shiny feature. The customers, they will look at the feature, and what will they do? You say, huh? What is this for? I don't understand. I don't know what to do with that. And it would be funny if it wasn't tragic, because unfortunately, this is what happens. Everyone put their love on something and then create a product that nobody really needs. So it is not a feature, this, it is a bug and needs a hot fix. So the problem is how things happen. And we need to change that because here is full of anti-patterns. And an anti-pattern is something extremely counterproductive. If you keep following certain aspects, it will lead you to trouble. And that is something I'm going to illustrate to you. Because the reason product teams exist is for sure not to create solutions we love and users couldn't care less about it. That's not the reason. It exists to create value for both sides, customers and the business. But let's understand a common scenario. I gave you an overview of how companies work. But when we start looking at a way of working that's quite common, and I call this one as the coordinative flow. A coordinative flow prioritizes coordination, and you have to deal with that. Let's say the beginning is just the same. You have many ideas, and then you coordinate the very first thing, the prioritization. So you discuss all over the thing and so on, and eventually you move something to the next phase, the design. And here, more coordination. Product designers need to understand with business stakeholders what do they want and so on, and product managers will be between the chairs and so on. And eventually you come up with a design that is perfect and you love the design. And what do you do next? After some months working on that, you do user test. But here there's already a problem. You have fallen in love with the solution because you invested so much time into the solution. You were speculating and then you believe it's the right solution. When you go to test this solution that you invest so much of your blood and soul, big chance you are going to confirm your biases and you think it will be right. Then after that, the specifications are thrown over the fence to software engineers. They won't like that. They will say, what am I supposed to do? I don't agree with that. I think there's a better solution. Software engineers and designers will find compromise. No one will be happy, but they will deliver something. And that goes live eventually, and you launch that. And what is the result when you launch? The result is almost always the same. It will be the fanciest piece of crap ever created. Everyone will be mad about it. And it's very complicated, this approach, because it is very slow, you cause a lot of waste, and no one is happy about it. Business people will be demotivated. The ones who worked on this will be demotivated. And customers, well, they don't like the crap either, so they will be also demotivated. And there's only one fact here. Before you can succeed, you're going to create more crap because you have a lot of ideas there. And here, the challenge is the following. The question we ask. When I started my career as a product manager more than a decade ago, I would look at the beginning and I would ask them, how can we accelerate delivery? But that has an assumption that I knew what was right to deliver. But I think this question is wrong. I think it's better to ask another question actually. Because let's talk about some facts. 9 out of 10 ideas will fail. You don't need to take my word on it. This is the reality for startups. And 5 years from now, all startups that started right now, only 10% will make it. 90% will evaporate. And the reason they evaporate is because their idea does not have a business model, a viable one. Maybe it's not desirable or something like this. It won't work. But something funny happens with the 10% that make it. They will become a growing business. They will become a well-established company. But then they will maybe become a little bit confident and they think that their ideas now are bulletproof. They forget this fact here that not all ideas will work. And that's no different inside companies. And the better question to ask is this one. How fast can you drop bad ideas? Because the faster you drop the bad ones, the sooner you can bet on the good ones. And that is a very important one. But to drop the bad ideas, you need to recognize common things that are dangerous. I said about the anti-patterns. Let's recognize something I call as the real battle. You may be hired to do product management, but soon you realize that your job is actually to do bullshit management. So, what the heck is this bullshit management? Well, one day I was annoyed with everything I was seeing, and I couldn't find a better name for that. And then I started with this term, bullshit management, and it has a definition. It's an art, but it's an art of spending time doing things that brings no value but drain all of your energy. And there is an equation behind it. It's a very simple equation. The more bullshit you handle, the less value you create. Now let me give you 4 examples when you are handling bullshit instead of doing product management. So there are very clear examples here. I would picture this one first for you. I call it as the waiter anti-pattern, gathering requirements over understanding problems. Let's picture a restaurant. You go to a restaurant, you arrive there, and then the waiter comes to you and asks, like, what would you like to eat? And then maybe you say, I'd like to have a burger. The waiter will say, all right, a burger. Yeah, but please remove the onion. And wait, okay, take note. Would you like to get some French fries together? Then the waiter say, yeah, okay, French fries, I will take it. And then the waiter, maybe you want to drink something. Say, yeah, a Coke. And the waiter takes the note, walks to the kitchen, and hang the note there and expect the kitchen to deliver. Maybe if you, as a customer, are lucky, the kitchen will remove the onion you said you didn't want. But what is the problem here? The problem is like the waiter is asking exactly what the customer wants and doesn't care if the customer should eat the burger. Maybe actually the customer should not eat the burger. Maybe the customer should eat something healthy. But the waiter doesn't care. It's just doing the job. It's a job. But if you look at product manager, I go to the business stakeholder and say, what is your idea? All right, so it means this. Okay, so that's your idea. I take notes here, I write the requirements, put in the backlog, and I expect the kitchen to deliver. Actually, this time it's not the kitchen, it's the developers. It's not that funny, but the fact you need to recognize is that the wants of business stakeholders are not always aligned with the needs from the customers. And you need to find a balance here, because if you create value only for one side, it doesn't work. So if you do something stakeholders want and users couldn't care less about it, then you go back to the fancy crap we created there. So the magic is when you understand the problem, because here it's highly important that you know the problem you are solving before you start trying to implement solutions. But that's not the only problem you face. There are more. What about this one? Consensus over the best product option. Sometimes I see some weird discussions. Let's say the product manager with a product designer talk to the customers, they do interviews and they understand many things and so on. They have seen things happening. And then they come to present to stakeholders and software engineers, which have not seen the interviews, they have not talked to customers, but then they start weighing their opinion without any fact. And then they need to feel heard, right? So you start adding what they say to the solution you created based on evidence. And now it becomes a solution based on evidence, because a solution based on opinion, because everyone needs to feel heard, software engineer and so on, and the others. And instead of searching for the best option for the product, you create the worst option possible that was not even on the table. You create an option that a stakeholder was heard, a software engineer watered down, and so on, and then you have a worse thing. But everyone commits to, everyone is happy about it. So I think that consensus driven decisions are quite bad for the product. It's better to have a consentment. Okay, I understand the solution. I may not agree with that, but you are the expert. You talk to the user. I trust you, and you have evidence. So my opinion here, it's just my opinion. I can give it, and you, the expert, you decide what you do with it. So if you want to take it, you take it. If you don't, no hard feelings. But unfortunately, that happens very seldomly. It's mainly, we have opinions, I want to feel heard. Be careful with consensus. You can get the worst option for the product. It was not even on the table. What about this one? Explaining failures over learning from them. It's quite embarrassing, this one, because failures are just a step towards success. It's impossible for you to innovate without failing. You can change the name, you can call it as experiment, you can say like, yeah, the experiment didn't reach the expected result. It's just another name for failing. It's okay. But the fact is, we are going to get many things wrong before we get it right. But which questions are leaders asking? If the leaders ask a question, okay, how do you avoid that next time? This question, how do you avoid that next time, means creating a process to prevent something going wrong. And when you prevent something going wrong, together you are just preventing innovation. If that's what you want, go for that. But if what you want is to help the others learn, you share what you learn from that. A better question is, okay, what did you learn from it? And then you share with the others. In one of the startups I worked, there was this problem, and the founders noticed that we were not talking about failures. And the founder said, we need to talk about failures because it's very important to learn from them. And they said, let's have one event in the company called the Fuck Up Night. So it will be like this. There will be drinks, there will be food, there will be a DJ, and someone takes a stage and shares something that went wrong and what you learned from that. That was the first event. No one there taking the stage. But one founder went there and started like this. The reason I'm here today standing in front of you is because I took 3 startups from zero to bankruptcy in 4 years. And that's why I'm here. You are the fourth startup. I hope I don't take it to bankrupt. But here's what I learned. And then the founder shared stories. That was so inspiring. Even now, when I speak about it, I get goosebumps. It was so nice. And then the others started going there and sharing. And that became natural. And then it was a culture where we could share that. I give you another problem, another bullshit management. Fear of saying no over focusing on goals. I know people don't like when you say no. They don't like being rejected. They don't like that. But if you say yes, you get a new responsibility. And then it's something else that will distract you from goals. Is that what you want? If it is, then that's the right answer. But saying no is kind of important. My first strategy was a flawed one. I can tell you. I would say no 5 times, 4 times, and if the person would come the fifth time, I would say, okay, what do you want? And then I would listen. But my boss would get so many emails, and I was considered the blocker. I had to change my strategy. Then I changed to be more empathetic. But I would ask questions. All right. So how did you come to this idea? Which evidence gives you this confidence? How do you know these help us get closer to our product strategy? What does success look like? And then the person would reflect and would not have the answer for all my questions and would say, "Mm, not now. Then let's leave it for later. I cannot answer this. You're right. I need to give some more thought to that. Or maybe it doesn't help our strategy. So this needs to be in another point in future." So these are just some examples about bullshit management. You can find more in my website. There are 10 more there you can look, and then you find some things that get in the way of creating value. But
Hey,
now I would say
yeah,
enough
David.
of
I
yeah.
just want to add something that came to my mind. Right, a lot of those, if you go back, I think a lot of that is really rooted in fear. Right, you go with consensus because you're afraid of being disliked by the rest of your team. Right, you go with a product that you know could potentially fail because you are afraid of failure. So just that fear of failing is forcing you to kind of go against something that you know in the back of your mind, or maybe you have a gut feeling, or sometimes you get like these little kind of insights. You're like, okay, you know what, this really doesn't feel right, but let's keep pushing ahead because, as you mentioned, we're invested so much. Design is invested, engineering is invested, right? And so you fear that, oh, we've lost so much time, and how am I going to explain that, etc. Right? So that's just something that came into my mind, that a lot of these traps are rooted in this psychology of fear that we have as human beings.
It's true because that's how we are wired. We want to prevent like bad experience.
Yes,
Yes. And then I want to give some tools for you to change this game.
awesome.
So if we think about it, I shared a normal way of working, a standard one that will lead to the fanciest crap. Now you know a little bit of bullshit management that gets in the way. How can you change that? Let's imagine the same timeline there. You start also with the best ideas in the world. But now, instead of going with a coordinative flow, you go with a collaborative one. What would you do? Instead of discussing a lot here about each idea and then picking one, you just say, let's take all of them and let's do something smart. So you say, how does this idea help us get closer to our product vision? Then you say, it doesn't. What about the relation with our strategy? Then you say, actually, it doesn't help with the strategy. And then you would say, what about our current goals? You say, yeah, it doesn't help actually. And then you keep asking these questions, and you will see how easy you can remove a big portion already. And this is an exercise that should not take longer than a couple of hours. And then you said, all right, now I dropped some things that I cannot support based on my current strategy, vision. Then let's move on and let's learn a little bit more. And say, these are the ideas that support my vision and strategy. What can I do with them right now? And you can think, maybe let's evaluate viability. Does it make any business sense? And you say, actually, I have no idea how to make this business viable. So why are we talking about it? And then you say, what about desirability? How do you know customers want that? And you say, actually, I have no evidence. I just think it's good. I say, well, okay, whatever. Then why are we doing that? Then you say, what about feasibility? You have a very fancy idea here, but can we do that? You say, no, we cannot do that. Maybe here there will be some things like you have a glimpse that someone would like that, then you need to run some experiments. Here I would suggest you invest a couple of days just for that, and then you can test if it's viable, feasible, and desirable. But after that, you want to invest more, but you don't have 10 ideas anymore. They fell on the way, and you have three. What about experiment with them a little bit more serious? You want to see how customers understand, how it makes sense for them and for your business. Here you're going to invest a little bit more time. Maybe we're talking a few days, 1 week or two, and then you start realizing that some things mm, they don't really work. And then is the moment you say, aha, this is the idea that I found a solution that totally makes sense. So let's invest time into launching. And then you make something that is valuable. And by this way of collaborating instead of coordinating, you can drop the bad ideas faster. And how did you get to this point here? The secret is very simple. It is about doing the product discovery. That will help you. So you need to collaborate. That's the first thing. And then you apply product discovery correctly, then you can drop the bad ideas as fast as possible. But then you still need to use the right ingredients. So when it comes to using the right ingredients, you step back and you look at your reality. First thing, how do you work? It's important to recognize that. And I'm a person who doesn't deal well with complexity, so I try simplifying everything. I believe two aspects will help you understand how your level of empowerment, decisions can be done inside the team, and how fast you can learn. If decisions are done outside the team and you cannot learn fast, you are a feature factory. Output defines success. But then it will happen something funny. Maybe you'll learn about the result of your output and you see that has no outcomes. And you don't understand why you're doing what you're doing. Then you become frustrated because you cannot change that. You are not empowered. You need somebody else to allow you. And you become frustrated. But there's something funny. Sometimes you're empowered, but you just don't know how to use it. I call it the self trap. You can change it, but you are not learning fast enough the results, so you're not challenging. And the beautiful thing is once you are empowered and you learn fast enough. These are the game changers. Because these are the teams that drive value steadily. How do you understand your scenario? I'm going to give you 3 health checks here. So first thing, you look in a high level. Start with the product management health check. How is your product vision? Is it something that you use in your day-to-day? You use when you're planning your sprint, for example, you use in your review, you use when you're planning roadmaps and so on, has some purpose. What about your strategy? Does it make decisions easier for you? Or maybe you have no idea what the strategy is and you have to discuss about everything. What about objectives? Can you measure them? Do they help you? What about principles? Do you have something that enables the team to collaborate smoothly across teams, not only one team, that they follow the same principles? What about your business model? Do you understand that actually? Do you know how your actions contribute to this? These are the aspects of product management. And you can do that with your teams, with high level management, and just position what you think. And then after, you can say, there's something here I would like to change. I will give you some ideas where you can start. What about discovery? Discovery will go to the same, how well you understand your audience. You go with a value proposition. You go with interviews. How often do you talk to customers? And then how insightful they are. You go about identifying assumptions. That's not just enough. You need to identify, prioritize, and test. And then you can ideate on solutions. If you are fully trapped, which can be the case as I was several times, the easiest way to start is with assumptions. Because no matter what you do right now inside the team, you can ask the question, what do we assume to happen here? We are creating this feature. What are our assumptions? Then you test the assumptions, and that will enable you to create evidence and challenge why we are doing what we are doing. And then that triggers conversations that will enable you to have goals, have principles, and so on. Generally, starting with the assumption is what enables you to get the orders. And going to the delivery, which is the last health check for today. Look at the aspects. How do you implement things? Do you build it right straight away, even though you lack evidence it's the right thing to do? Or do you dare to use technical debt? You build first, you learn, you know the solution doesn't stand, but then once you learn, you pay the debt off, and then you can scale. Do you measure results, or actually velocity is all that matters? Or maybe it's the outcome. What about feature? Do you dare removing features from your product if they don't create value? Or do you just keep them living forever? What about facing failures? Do you, as we discussed here, do you avoid them or do you learn from them? And what about your product backlog? Is it just a big wish list or is it something related to the goal? So these are some health checks that can help you understand your situation, and then you can step back and decide, do something differently. So what I encourage you to do is to step back, challenge the status quo, and then you have a chance of better tomorrow. And you always have a choice. You can, if you want, bow to the status quo, and you get stuck to whatever it is. Maybe it's fine for you, and there's nothing wrong. You can accept that. It's about making peace with the status quo. But if you are like me, a little bit rebel that want to make things better, then you can challenge the status quo and have a chance of better tomorrow. And I use the word here, chance, because that's what you have. You have a chance of a better tomorrow if you dare to challenge the status quo. And that would help you improve. And then you reflect, what is your choice? So that was the talk for today. So you can follow me on LinkedIn, can subscribe to my newsletter. And one thing I wanted to offer you, if you want to level up, we talk here about product discovery. I'm running a cohort starting 31st of August. And for those watching, I'm going to give you 15% off. And it's going to be live for sessions of 2 hours. We are going to exchange hands-on and so on. And that's what I would like to offer you. And now I can take time for some questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David. I have a question actually. I think what often happens is product managers, let's say you go into a new company, and maybe it's not a startup, right? Maybe it's a well-established company, and you see these anti-patterns, right? And you talked about challenging the status quo. I mean, I'm guessing, do you have any tips or any advice on how you can do that? Because let's say, you join a company and you're just one manager of many, but you see, and it's really hard to know what that this company is operating that on that anti-pattern, until you actually join and you start, you're in your first, second, third month, and you start seeing that, okay, you know what, this is a feature factory, and we're kind of working in reverse. So what are some of your tips, in how to approach that and how to talk to management, in making some of those changes and challenging?
Yeah. There are different ways. Like, you can understand if it's a feature factory by looking at the roadmap. If the roadmap is output oriented, most probably is a feature factory. But how do you get them to change? First, you need to touch something they care about. I have found something that tend to work quite well,
Mm-hmm.
and it's about talking exactly about what they don't want to lose, which is money. So when you arrive there, look at all the features that were created over the last 12 months, and then evaluate how often they are used and how much value they create. And if you can understand how often they are used and how much value they create, there's a big chance you are going to see that a huge portion of these features are never used. And then you can ask management, saying like, I realized that 50% of features created over the last 12 months were never used during the last 6 months, or something like this. You come up with the numbers, and then you say, is that what you want? Do you want us to keep this way, building features that users don't use? If that's what you want, we are in the right track. We keep doing that, we will build more features nobody use.
Mm-hmm.
And then you say, look at the value we created. The value created out of the investment from this team with 5 software engineers, product designer, and product manager is this. Maybe we could try something different. So that's what I try to make them reflect and see the problem. Like make my problem their problem. They need to understand the consequence. And that can enable to have a conversation, but then it has a caveat here. No one wants to change from output or feature factory, so to say, to an empowered team from one day to the other. It's too much of a leap. It's very hard. But then you can say, what if during the next roadmap, we commit to 20% of the team's capacity to focus on the outcome, just 20%. And then we see what happens. And then we measure the results and we compare. Kind of a roadmap A B testing, so to say.
Gotcha.
That is what can enable you to make a transition.
Okay, awesome. And you had a slide as well about doing the health check. So, in fact, it was funny, Furkan posted this before you put your slide up, that a key point being having a strategy in the first place, right? Many don't have that or have some wrong definition of it. I'm curious, like you know, what has your experience been, perhaps with some organizations that don't have a strategy in place, or have the wrong definition of it, and they're just kind of chugging along, right? It's one thing to say, hey, you know what, let's A/B test our next roadmap, but then if something is amiss in strategy, then kind of what do you do as a product manager?
Sure. There's a big chance there is an unspoken strategy, which only the founders know, but they don't communicate, or the C level of the company knows. I had been in many situations where the strategy was absent, but it exists on the head of some people. So you need to interview and understand. So generally, I try looking at the scenario to evaluate where we are. So what is most important now? Is it growth? Are we in a moment that we are scaling up, or is it, for example, retention? What are we trying to achieve? Then I go to the founder and I say, what is the most important now? Then they start saying many things. They will say probably 3 4 things. I say, if there's one thing that we must do right now, what it is, they generally have the answer. They have. You just need to ask them. They may say everything is important, and they say, all right, so let me tell you what happens. We do all of them in parallel. So all of them will take longer. But if you pick one, we achieve that, then we move to the others. You collect value faster. Help me understand. So talk to the founders to understand what is most important right now. And then there is a caveat saying, if this is the most important right now, what can I sacrifice to achieve that? Because there is no free lunch. You need to know the trade offs you can do. One example I had in these conversations with founder, the founder told me the most important right now is to have a sustainable customer acquisition cost and customer lifetime value, but I don't know how to solve that. He said, I would be willing to explore different channels, even if we include the customer acquisition costs in the short term in exchange for a medium term better. So I am willing to increase right now, but we cannot stay the way we are. But then it was clear the trade off. Could explore with something, and even if it would go wrong, the founder would be fine. So you need to know what trade off it is, not only the goal wouldn't be enough.
That's great advice, right? I can speak for myself. On in my product career, you join a company, you're just kind of heads down, you're given a backlog, and you're given an existing product to work on, and you really don't, question these things. So that's great. David, I know we're out of time. We have one question if you have time for
Yeah,
that. It's actually from Furkan again. So there are some arguments that at early stage startups, they have to be feature factories in a way to learn fast, right? We keep hearing this: build fast, fail fast. So, what is your opinion on that?
I think this is a flawed argument. I don't think you need to be feature factory. We need to learn fast. And there are different ways to learn fast. You don't need to build to learn. You can observe users. You can use unmoderated sessions. There are so many techniques to learn that doesn't justify building. I think that's just an excuse saying, I would rephrase saying, in other words, is the only method we know to run product discovery is about creating uh, simple solutions and learn from testing solutions. But they are saying that's the only method they know. So you can bring new methods. There are at least 100 others. David Bland had a book. It is 44 ways of testing business and ideas. There are some websites. Pavel Haring posted recently with more than 100 methods. So it's about understanding what you want to learn and finding the most suitable method for that.
Awesome. So yeah, I think despite our best efforts, we do all get stuck in anti patterns, and so the tips you presented were fantastic, which I think will help us all be more mindful in our day-to-day PM duties, so that we could break these patterns when we see them and build better products. David, this was super valuable, and on behalf of our product community and the Product Soch team, thank you so much, and thank you to all of you for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you.